there. So it's the 28th and 29th of March.
I just wonder how the economics would be for the team of starting that early. They draw enough people that they must, that it makes economic sense to be having a game. I just
We'll
wonder
get
how
162 games in. You got to start.
I guess.
They just started off.
Is that still in doubt?
Still in limbo. So the issue that they're going to issue another offer tomorrow.
Yes,
that's
that's some of these guys. A lot of fees. All the way around. I didn't, that's not
Oh, yeah.
exclusive to one side or the other. It's only that they go in, say some things that you get players that they go in and do this and say something. My favorite of recent.
The door.
Yeah, nobody else here.
Here, who said, because I guess he was tried to test it several times, and he said, okay.
It's called the YouTubes can hear us.
You have anybody on YouTube? You can't tell.
I can't tell.
Okay, well, I'll call the meeting to order. Looks like it's at 2:00. Judy, would you call the roll, please?
Swanson,
Here.
Zibble,
Here.
McNamee, Sheets,
Here.
Dines.
Oh, you don't have to call Brandon.
Okay, shall we stand for the pledge?
Easy for you to say.
You just
stay.
That's okay. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just can't stay.
Oh,
Okay, well, let's do our traditional. Mr. Zibble, you're on.
Anybody want it? The mission for Laketran. Laketran is committed to providing quality public transportation services to all Lake County residents with special emphasis on meeting the transportation needs of seniors and people with disabilities.
Thank you. I'm not sure what'll happen if one day you say you won't do it. We may have to stop the meeting at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is public comments. Do we have any public comments?
we don't have anybody signed in, right?
Okay.
Nope.
Very good. Thank you. So we'll move right to approval of minutes from our December 17th meeting, as we did not have a January meeting. May I have a motion to approve?
That's just the agenda. The minutes were in the Govenda packet. Okay.
Okay.
I'll second it then.
Trudy, can we have the roll, please?
Swanson, Zibble,
Yes.
McNamee, Sheets.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is getting into the discussion. But before we actually get into that part of the discussion, we haven't met since our tour. We didn't have a January meeting because we had a couple of people out. So I thought we ought to spend just half a second if anybody wants to make any comments or observations about our tour of the building. since we've not had that opportunity up to this point. Anybody have anything they want to say about the tour? Anything they learned, they didn't learn, liked, disliked?
I think it did an excellent job of clarifying. Out of practice again, apologize. I think the tour did an excellent job of clarifying the needs for the building renovation and expansion. I mean, it was just, if anyone was in doubt, I think that really showed what the challenges were this organization faces.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Chuck?
I thought it was worthwhile come in and see it and make that tour. It's been a while since I'd really been around during the day to see a lot of the activity that was going on. It was good to see.
I feel much the same. Thank you. Okay, having dispensed with that, let's head into our discussion about the what we're going to do about a recommendation to the full board. Anybody have any comments that they'd like to make at this point? Thoughts, observations, complaints?
Go ahead.
I have a couple things to say. As you all know, I tried to reach out to the board members over the last couple months about what kind of information we're looking for in order to make an informed decision. And I just wanted to share with you some of the comments that I got back, and these are in no order. They're just sort of grouped in two directions. They're comments that were favoring and comments that were questioning the expansion. Some of the comments that were questioning were things that were mentioned to me, that things like, we need a strategic plan first. Where does the building fit into that plan? I don't understand who Laketran is. Where is it going? How do I know this is the right and best plan? I've heard 9, 18, and 22 million. What's the right number? What does the future hold for public transit in our county? Have we really analyzed the efficiency of our processes to determine what we need in a building? Can technology help to offset building expansion? And can we do ad hoc projects as needed instead of the whole thing? Comments favoring were, some of which were needed. It's needed to maintain our ability to service our constituents. It's needed for employee morale, needed to allow for growth. Current building limitations affect efficiency. It will only get more expensive if we delay. Not enough room for some functions to be carried out properly. We have the money. Current building is old enough to require significant attention. We need to catch up on deferred maintenance issues. So that's sort of a flavoring. It's by no means complete, obviously, but it's a flavoring of the comments that I received while I was having discussions from you guys and other members on the board. So.
Go ahead, but when you're done, I'd like to comment on
Please
some of
go.
this.
Please do.
I don't want to interrupt you.
I'm just rambling.
Okay. On the list of why not to do it, the first one in particular struck me. We need a strategic plan first. We are operating under the strategic plan of 2018. That is what drove this. And this building is more or less the last step of that strategic plan. The strategic plan called for the levy, and I pulled information, if anyone wants to look at it, what we told the public in the levy in terms of the future of Laketran and the needs for dial-a-ride, health and job access, and how the growth was coming at us for seniors in particular. So we've done that. And we have been working on that with everything has been doing. And he could better than I detail that if anyone wants to hear it. Second, Well, I spoke to the future of public transit. I'm not sure what was meant by ad hoc projects unless someone is suggesting that we break this down and do things piecemeal. That's not going to work for a number of reasons. First of all, we have the funding situation to deal with, and it's only going to cost more money if we try to break it down. Even with what I've been going through in my home, and you probably have too, probably any one of you at this table. Once you start tearing it apart, you find things that need done, and it has to be done strategically. You figure out what's got to come first before you do another piece, or otherwise you're going to have to backtrack and fix something else. It makes no sense when the money is available now and costs are rising to continue to play around with trying to do this piecemeal. Over the years, we have been doing things piecemeal when something needed repaired. But some of the bigger projects, they have been put on hold as well, again, until we had additional funding from the levy.
Okay, any other comments?
I'll just echo Donna's comments about started in 2018, and this is one of the final steps in trying to finalize the planning that we had done back in 2018. So it's just the continuation of it and trying to get it to go on. Again, trying to make sure that we can meet the service levels and the service needs that we were expecting to be meeting in 2018, which we weren't at that time. And then we went to get the levy, and 60% of the voters in Lake County at that time were supportive of what we were doing. So, and what we had told them. So I think it shows that we have very good support from the local community.
Okay. Blaine, any comments?
Well, first of all, I absolutely agree that this building needs to have some upgrades and changes made, but I do not support the current package that we have in front of us. I think we do need, as I think Donna mentioned, I couldn't quite understand her, that we need a strategic planning effort for not only just the building, but for Laketran in general for the future. And so I can't support the current building renovation as it stands.
Okay, well, so, and I'll throw in my comments. I think the argument about the 2018, this being an extension of the 2018 strategic plan is probably, in my mind, not exactly on spot. And the reason I don't think it is because 2/3 of this board weren't here for that. And it's hard to agree to spend whatever the number is, $18 or $22 million when you don't know the background on it. I mean, that's a tough decision to make. My own view of this is there's not a crushing need. We're meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, we're meeting customer demand now with the facilities that we have. We have a board that is predominantly newer, that is basically saying to me, I'm uncomfortable. I don't know what we're doing or why we're doing it. And I need more information. I need to understand the process better. So I think where I come down on this is I couldn't support it today. I don't think today's time. I think it's something that we need to take another look at. I think the board in general, the newer board members in general, feel a certain degree of discomfort with moving forward at this time and would like more time to understand the issues. Having said that, it sounds like we're not going to be able to make a recommendation to the board. I mean, it sounds as if we're going to be deadlocked on this thing. We have two going forward that want to go forward, two of us that aren't comfortable going forward at this point. I don't think anybody has said, under no circumstance would I ever vote for it. I think instead, what I'm hearing and what I personally feel is I need to understand more of what we're trying to do. And slowing down and taking a closer look at this, another look at it, so that we can bring everybody up to speed on it, to me, makes perfect sense. Particularly since we're not crushed with a need today. Is that an accurate statement?
As far as service going this particular minute, the service on the road is meeting the demand. I would say we have some employee space work environment challenges, which are an actual problem today.
And I will go on record as saying that you would get full support of the board from my understanding of what was told to me, what Donnie asked about the ad hoc. The ad hoc was a term that came up. I don't even remember who gave it to me in discussions. But things like taking a look at the driver's lounge, taking a look at the front walkway, the high-speed doors, those all make sense. I think the board, as I understand it, could get behind that completely. Those are bite-sized projects that we as newbies can wrap our fingers around and understand. When we start to talk about a $20 million expansion, there's a big fall off in understanding of the puts and takes of that. So that's what the ad hoc, I don't even remember who brought that up, but it would be special projects. Lane, was that your term, Lane?
Yeah, in July of 2021. I sent this to everybody.
That's where okay. I knew I'd heard it somewhere. Thank you. Thank you. So is my assessment of where we're at correct?
Respectfully, in my view, not completely.
Say again?
Respectfully, in my view, not completely. I've never been a part of an organization where a strategic plan was in place that the current board was not recognizing. I don't know how, when we're this far along in the 2018 plan, we can suddenly throw it out, say, well, we're not going to complete that. We're going to go forward in another way. I object to that.
Noted.
Secondly, while we are okay at the moment, the growth continues. The future of public transit is not going to totally die. And we have to understand that Laketran is in a very different place than a lot of other systems anyone may be hearing or reading about, including our neighbor to the west, RTA. Laketran is in a more unique situation because our choice riders are less than our dependent riders, which is largely dial-a-ride. They are not going anywhere. And in this county, we have a problem in quotes, that actually prompted the commissioners a few years ago to hire someone to help them with and track senior issues. They know there's housing issues, healthcare issues, transportation issues, and they have to meet these needs. Laketran is critical to what's going to happen in this county in terms of transportation for our seniors, which is going to grow to approximately a third of the population, 60 and up, by 2030. That's still fundamentally on track. My concern is the amount of time it's going to take just to complete the steps before we can even break ground or begin the process. This takes time, and we are going to, at some point, have another surge in growth. And we have got to be able to continue to move forward. And I don't think putting this on the back burner is going to do anyone in this county any good.
Noted. Any other comments?
Maybe I used the wrong term, strategic plan. The term I should have maybe used was a reevaluation of the current plan and get some different people in here to look at it.
Okay, thank you. Noted.
What other kind of people would you be?
Somebody
suggesting?
other than Bowen.
I'm not understanding what that means.
Well,
Bowen is the architect that took the plan, the program that was developed, saying this is what we wanted to, this is our needs for the building. And then they developed the plans along those lines.
Well, Chuck, I understand that, but there's a major difference between 9 or 11 million and 20 and 22 million. It makes no sense that all of a sudden, after we have one plan that was done by a trusted company we've used time and time again, all of a sudden is twice what it was. And if you go out in the lobby, it says Bowen did this building in 1992. I want to know what it cost in 1992 to see if we can extrapolate today's building costs for the same kind of building. And I can't get any information on that. Everybody says, well, we don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You've got to have records. That's crazy.
Chuck, you were going to make a comment?
Yeah, I've lost my train of thought now and what my comment was, but I guess, Gary, where I was coming from on this, I understand what your comments are regarding the need to better understand things that are going on and what you receive back on that. And I greatly appreciate that. I would not want to be in that kind of position either of saying, okay, spend $20 million on the first day that I come into this place. But the point of it would be then is where or what is recommendation of this committee then going forward to say, this is the things we're going to do to take care of those concerns that you have. This is what we're going to do to educate you on what the future of Laketran is, what the need of the ridership is, how all the needs come together, and how phasing can have impacts on construction, not only for the cost, but also for the implementation of it. Again, I think as Ben has mentioned a number of times before, that when you touch one area, such as the driver's room, that's going to displace another group someplace else while we have to work on that room. And then you can move people into that part of it, but then you got to disrupt other people. So it's kind of a phased construction anyway, just because of the way that they have to figure it out. So I guess from that standpoint, I would just really like to maybe have some discussion more on what do we want to do, or how do we have to go about helping these people gain a better understanding.
Well, and that's exactly why I was trying to have those conversations, Chuck.
Yeah.
There's almost a universal consensus from my discussions that the strategic plan needs to be reviewed. Whether I don't know that it's a new one, Donna. I don't know if it starts from scratch. I don't know if it's, one session of everybody looking together at the 2018 meeting and plan and saying, okay, now I understand it. Let's go. Maybe it's a 1-day special board meeting or something.
That would be a minimum in my mind.
Well, that's exactly right. It's complicated. The level of discussion didn't get that far So I can't tell you for sure. I can only tell you the impressions that I got in those discussions was that there's a universal lack of confidence that we understand why we're spending $22 million or 20 million or 18 million, whatever the right number is. I'm not even sure what the right number is anymore.
Yeah.
But whatever that number is, and even I suppose $9 or $10 million would still generate the same level of, or some level of, okay, I'm not saying no, but I'm not ready to say yes because I don't understand it well enough. So maybe it's a review together of the plan, maybe it's sitting down with whoever wrote the plan and having a presentation for the new ones. I mean, you guys probably already did that, right? When it was done in 2018, but 2/3 of the board, close to 2/3 didn't have that opportunity. And that's what I'm hearing back. And that maybe one day puts this thing, rights the ship and we get a plan out of it. I honestly don't know the answer to that. I wish I could tell you.
Well, I mean, to me, that's some good direction to give to Ben to say, okay, we need staff to make another full-blown type of presentation to the whole board of what they did back in 2018. If that's really where we're headed with this whole thing, to show what the game plan was back then, what the driving need was back then, which was the service wasn't to the levels that we were wanting them to be as a board at that time. They weren't serving the public like we wanted them to serve them. So moving forward, we had to do these other things, which he's implemented some of those already, and which then the building is just another aspect of this, of the whole plan.
Well, good.
Yes, sir.
For those of us that were here in 2018, the three of us should recall, we were shocked when we saw the $11 million. You remember that, Chuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a yes or no. I was shocked. You were too, and so was Donna. And the rest of the board's going, what? And then they went and reevaluated, and I think they came up with $9 million. And then Ben went out and hired somebody else. And they came back with 22 or 20, whatever the number was.
If you remember too, at that point, we were talking about that 10 million, we didn't have the cash. We even
That has nothing to do with it.
Well,
It's 10 million or 20 million.
the financing part of it back then bothered me a lot. I certainly didn't want to go out and borrow money to spend $10 million worth of
We
construction.
had money then. Come on.
If I may interject something here,
I couldn't understand her.
Mr. Zibble is correct. There was a discussion at that point in time about how to finance some things. And no one wanted to go into debt. And there was a level of shock at that meeting. I remember it well. And it was largely around the fact that we were not there yet. And I think some of us didn't quite understand at the time. I didn't, because I hadn't been here a lot, taking care of parents in another state. But the lack of understanding, I feel, was surrounded by the very fact that there wasn't a solid understanding of where we were at with this and what work had been done leading up to this presentation about the $10 million building. And I feel that that was resolved and explained adequately, that we went forward from there. So it wasn't as if that came to the table and was ignored.
The financing was ignored? I'm sorry, I'm disconnected from what you just said, Donna.
The issue of the $10 million, Lang mentioned that I was shocked, he was shocked, others were shocked. But it was not a shock, at least not to me, about the fact that of the cost, but where we were at and what exactly were we being asked to do at that particular meeting at that particular point in time.
Okay, well, let's see, instead of going backwards on this. Let's see if we can come to something that can move us forward. Okay? So board was looking for us to make a recommendation. I don't think we're going to be able to make a recommendation to go forward at this point, because at least two of us aren't comfortable going forward. So can we come up with a different recommendation? Can we recommend, and I would suggest we recommend that we revisit as a board the 2018 plan, strategic plan, to see if that helps bridge this issue of discomfort with the newer board members. I'm just throwing that out as something to think about. I don't, I need some feedback on that.
As I said earlier, Gary, I think that is a very plausible option for us to go down. And I think that does help take the discomfort away from the people. And again, it's something that Ben then can really take a hold of and develop some kind of a presentation along those lines, or create the opportunity for us to have the further discussion on it.
Okay. I want to emphasize that my characterizations of these conversations are my characterizations, I hope they don't get, I hope I'm not mischaracterizing them, but in no way did any of the board members say to me, absolutely not. So don't get the impression that nobody, at least in my conversations, and if I've projected it differently, I apologize. In my conversations, there was nobody who said, we're not spending a penny on the building. It was all, we'll do what we need to do, but I don't know what that is.
I've never heard that from anybody either.
I'm sorry?
I say, I've never heard that from anybody either. Everybody knows that something has to be done. It's just that we don't have a clear path on how and what and how much it should cost. And as I put in writing in July of last year, we're talking about basically the same thing. Because of the COVID, we put off doing anything for a time period. I said 2 years. It doesn't matter what the time period is, but in my little write-up here, it did say, do the things that we can do easily and quickly and that need to be done. And the walkway and the doors and the few other things that we would approve are something we should do. I agree. But never did anybody, any board member I've talked to, ever say we shouldn't do anything. That's never been the case. It's just that the amount of money that all of a sudden went from 11 to 22 million, whatever the numbers were. The board was shocked at the 11 million or 10 million, whatever it was. And you think you're shocked at a 10 or 11 million. Somebody turns around and out of the clear blue sky comes up with 22 million or whatever the number is. You think you were shocked at 11 or 10 million. What you think what do you call it when it's 22 million?
And the costs continue to rise.
Well, can we get some agreement on that? My proposal, roughly speaking, as a recommendation to the board? Unless you have something else that you think we ought to be doing. I'm happy to hear, but I'm not hearing that. So I'm proposing that essentially my report to the board at the board meeting would be that this committee would recommend that we, as a full board, revisit the strategic plan of 2018, upgraded to what we know today, to see if we can get some consensus.
There wasn't a strategic plan in 2018. I thought it was 2014 was the last one.
Yeah, I think that's right. Now that you mentioned it, we're coming up on 10 years. So it wasn't
Right.
2018, it was 2014.
There was it was technically called a comprehensive operational analysis done in 2013, 14. That was the document that was done when Ray was here. I think the plan Chuck and Don are talking about is the retreat we had in 2018, which laid out the options before the board at the time, which was levy, no levy. If we do a levy, these are the things we have to do. If we don't do a levy, these are the things we have to do. So it wasn't I wouldn't necessarily characterize it as a full-blown strategic plan, but there was a list of, we didn't want to do a strategic plan at the time because there was two outcomes of the levy. And so we didn't want to spend the time to do a strategic plan before or after because we didn't know what was going to happen. So there was a list of short-term objectives if it passed and a list of short-term objectives if it failed.
Makes sense.
And so the building was sort of quote unquote the last short-term objective if the levy passed. So I think that's the plan people are referring to. I don't think looking at the 2014 plan would do us a lot of good because it's very difficult to make it relevant.
Yeah, I
today.
read it. It's obsolete right now.
I think going over the rehashing or rediscussing the board retreat in 2018, which is where the levy was first discussed, is probably where that is sort of what laid out the steps before us. Because in 2018, I came to the board essentially saying, we have a problem we have ignored for a long time, which is the status of dial-a-ride and what's going on behind the scenes. And I can't speak to why that wasn't discussed previously. That was before I was here. But there were some major issues with dial-a-ride then. And so when we talked about it, we talked about, do we want to fundamentally, big picture, do we want to live within our means and reduce service by approximately 30%? Or do we want to talk to the public about more service? And so the plan that Chuck and Donna and Lane was there for were the steps after one of those two outcomes. So that and that was, we spent basically a whole day talking about the state of dial-a-ride. So I would want to condense that. If we want to talk about it again, which I think is not a big deal, we have all the information from then. So that's, I think, yeah, if that makes sense.
Well, at least in part, it makes sense. Where we're going to have some difficulty, I think, is understanding the impacts of the changes, if you will, or at least perceived changes that may be coming down the road in public transit based on work from home, based on COVID, and based on the van pooling and those other things that we're hearing about, but we don't know how that's going to impact us. So, if there was a way to include some of that kind of discussion in what we're talking about, I think that would be very helpful. And I'm speaking personally on that. It's just, I think there's big changes on the horizon, and I'm not sure that, I know that I don't understand their impact. I'd like to get a better understanding of that.
Is that something you'd be looking for me to provide for you, or a consultant, or a combo, or?
I guess I need some help on where the best solution would, or the best information would come from.
What
Whoever
I
has
was-
the best crystal ball.
I was just gonna make a comment on this. In the past, we've done little mini sessions. The one in 18 was one of them. Sometimes we have also included an outside facilitator, someone who is well-versed in transit and the issues surrounding it. Maybe what we ought to do is do one of these fairly soon, where we have a presentation from you at the beginning to show where we came from, as you just gave a little mini version of, from 2014 to 18 and from 18 until now, and what we've been functioning under. And then from there, put it in the hands of a facilitator to do an overview, if you will, something more along the lines that Gary seems to be looking for. But I wouldn't want to drag this out too far because time's a wasting and the board's going to be shocked again, I'm afraid, when they see what the cost has gone up to. How quickly could we get this done?
So
Feel free to modify anything I said. I'm not wed to it. I'm just trying to put out one idea.
I'm
for
just trying,
discussion.
It's a good idea.
I was trying to think. So I know the board was unhappy with the work WSP started in the previous iteration of the strategic plan recently. In that procurement process, we had, I can't remember the exact number of vendors, it was 6 or 7. We had a good spread. The top vendors were very close in scoring. So if you wanted it done as fast as possible, I could go back to that procurement and we could have that vendor, I would say not just selected, I would say, maybe before this committee come in and interview and see if the board liked that group of individuals and talk about if they're happy with the scope or not. And that would be a quick way to move forward rapidly with that vendor. If it's one you like, if we don't like them, then, we can go down the list again.
Or can we simplify the process and just simply that's a relative term, I suppose. Get somebody in here who can speak to us about where transportation is going. Give us a 1-hour transportation direction spiel. Would we have somebody in mind that might be capable of that?
So more like a general, come to like a board meeting and give where's the industry going type of conversation? Or come to this committee or either one?
No, I would think it might as well go to the full board at this point, but that would be my guess. But I'm not 100% certain, Ben. I guess for me, when I look out, I see nothing but gray. It would be nice to have somebody at least add 100 yards to that vision.
There are, I can think of a number of consultants that do that type of work. The area that we would want to think about a little bit, because this is what I don't 100% know the answer to. And I know it can be difficult for the board to have this perspective, but we are a very unique transit system. Most of what people talk about with the future is fixed route and commuter express oriented. They don't talk about, and there aren't a lot of discussions about the future of dial-a-ride type services.
Or not even paratransit, if I may interrupt, which is connected to fixed routes and improving that for an aging and more disabled population. So I'm going to interject this too, that it's going to be challenging to get someone in here who can address it, that would take in the scope of our needs, because we are so unique in the way we deliver service.
Well, I think that what I was kind of driving at is I think it may be pertinent to have. I was trying to think of this as maybe 2 conversations. One about dial-a-ride demand response type of service. One about fixed route and commuter express. And the reason I say that is because I think those are probably 2 different experts. Because most cities are heavily focused on the fixed route side of things. That's where there is a lot more uncertainty in the world, especially commuter express type services. Work from home has a huge impact on that. And so there's a lot more general uncertainty in that style of service. On the demand response side, it's not uncertainty about how the service will run, it's about how fast it will return. And so it's kind of 2 different concepts, if that makes sense. I'm not saying it can't be one, I'm just trying to think with the board as what might be the most effective, because the strategies about commuter express and fixed route could be exceptionally different than dial-a-ride.
Donna?
To add to your thoughts, I have a thought. We are operating also in a different environment where most of these systems are operating on any kind of a scale. We have, compared to other systems, that I still think of Laketran as a small system, given the environment we're operating in. Technically, I know that's not the case, but we have a tremendous amount of assets. Even the technology we have is not common for a lot of the smaller systems which may also, those kinds of issues may also present a challenge in grasping a full picture. But in terms of the environment we're functioning in and our population growth, which is not an overall growth of the population, but a growth in a segment of our population, which is presenting to everyone in the county who deals with these issues, it's a lateral shift. We have more people of a certain age group with a subset of problems that have to be dealt with. So what I'm thinking is the commissioner's office is also dealing with these issues. What if someone from their office were included as part of this conversation to discuss the environment that we're all trying to function in terms of delivery of senior services, of which transportation is an important part.
Well, we could be here the rest of the afternoon talking about this and nothing's going to get resolved. Gary, what do you think the recommendation to the board is? We don't have one, right? And if we do have one, it'll be to take another look at what we're doing here. I don't know what else to say because we do need to do something. The building does need a lot of things, but it doesn't need a relatively or a $22 million expenditure for things we're not really sure of. And let's face it, the biggest problem we have faced in the last 3+ years is this goddamn COVID thing. And that has made it to the point where our wonderful government is even screwing it up even more. They don't even know when it's going to end, if it's going to end. And knowing the government, they don't want it to end. The whole thing is crazy. You guys all watch the news. They don't know what they're doing. We know that. Even the medical profession doesn't know what they're doing. So how in the hell can we schedule something for the future of a building plan and a ridership that we're not sure of when the government is just screwing everything up? I'm sorry, this is just a mess.
Well, bringing it back to where we're at today, actually, Lane, I think we do have a recommendation. And the recommendation is that, as I understand it, we're all basically in agreement now. What the format of it is going to be, we can have more discussions about. But I think what I'm hearing is an agreement that we should be reviewing the plans that we have and looking to develop, change, modify, accept.
That's what I meant.
Moving forward. Okay.
We don't have an agreement on going ahead with the project as it is what I'm trying to say.
Well, yeah, we don't, that would have to be fleshed out. The details of it would have to be fleshed out. I don't think we're in a position to make that decision today. But I think we're in a position to recommend to the board that we take a look at that. Is that not correct?
I think that's the information you brought back to us, Gary, is that there's the interest from the rest of the board members to delve into it in more depth.
Right.
I think that would probably be a very good element to do.
And if I've misread that, they're going to, the full board's going to say, what are you talking about? So,
Well, if they do, then we have to go back.
Right.
Reestablish what we want to, how we want to do. Maybe then just the four of us spend the time going through that.
Right.
But I think we do have to be some prepared if there's some board members that would have a lackluster interest in doing it. They have all expressed it, but when it comes right down to it, will they actually be willing to sit there for a day and listen to it? That's just something you need to kind of have in the back of your mind is what's another alternative or what's going on besides that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
Would you like me to pursue finding someone to come in for an hour or so to talk about the future of the industry, like to this group first?
No.
Or, okay.
No. Why don't we carry on a conversation offline so people can get on? But we'll plan on having somebody come in and I would assume it would be to the full board, not to us, unless it gets kicked back to us from the board. Somebody that can help those that are on the fence get a better understanding of where the market is going, where our world is heading, so that we can figure out what we should be doing about it.
Okay, I just want to make sure I have my action items, correct.
Yeah. It's a little gray,
If anybody knows.
if anybody knows. Well, anytime you're looking in the future, it's looking into the future. So who really knows? But clearly, I think the message that I got from this was, I'm uncomfortable. I need some guidance to know where everything's moving. So let's see if we can fill that gap.
Gary, what kind of a time frame after the next board meeting then would we think we would want to?
I think we should keep
Recommend.
moving, as fast as we possibly can. I don't think we should delay any further than is absolutely required. I think we need to get a plan, and you're right, costs are changing. So, but, I think we need to keep it moving.
And I don't see any reason not to do some of these ancillary projects that are part of the overall picture, but are screaming, do me now, like the walkway and the doors and the driver's lounge and things like that. Things that you'll see an immediate and fairly quick result from.
I think that's a good point. Include that in the recommendation. Or do you guys want to halt in place till we get a full resolution?
I think we need to, if you mean by halt in place, go to the board and discuss with them what we have discussed today about taking a look backward as well as a look forward, and allow a recommendation to come out of that discussion rather than us trying to guess what they want to do as a group. They may just want a report to read, in which case we'd have someone come in and work with us, or they may want to be more participative in it.
So we'll have that discussion at the board meeting.
Correct.
There are some projects that we did that are in motion right now, which is the high-speed doors and the walkway. So we can, you want us to keep moving
Yeah.
forward with those? Okay,
Yeah, I don't think there'd be anybody who'd say we should stop those.
okay. There is nothing going on with the driver's room. I would say we want to do it for sure, but I think we should probably wait till we have a little more comprehensive view.
Agreed, but that probably is, if you put things on,
Oh, it's up at the top of the list. Yes, for sure.
and if there's things that we can do that, those are the top of the list, that makes sense right away, let's do them. Whether we have a full- Whether we have full approval of everything, there's nothing that's stopping us from approving parts of it, just like we've talked about.
Then I think I'll also say, then I think part of our recommendation would be to ask management to give us a list of projects that you think we can work on that wouldn't impact one way or the other the decision of the whole building.
They've already said they would do that in one of your write-ups.
Yeah, we can. So I'm happy to give the committee or the board a list of prioritized things. The part that would be potentially challenging is the way, but I know we don't want to do the project the way it is laid out today. I understand that. But knowing what a bigger long-term picture is may adjust how those things are completed.
Oh, of course.
So like, for example, the driver's room, as in the plan, involves relocating dispatch to another space so the driver's room can be bigger. So I wouldn't want to freshen up the driver's room if the long-term plan was to move dispatch. So I would want to have a plan, a general framework of a plan in place that we could bite off pieces of, but I wouldn't want to do the pieces until I had the bigger plan.
That's why we're asking you to do it, to give us a list of the things that make sense up front, rather than the driver's lounge, what is it, driver's lounge? Is that what we're calling it?
Driver's room is what we,
Driver's,
lounge works there.
whatever. I mean, if that impacts too many other things, well, we may put that off for a while, but maybe there's a way to change the plan a little bit to get that done faster. I don't know. But I'm not here to say that. There are some things that are just, that's the only thing that's going to happen, like the walkway. We don't have to worry about
Right,
anything but the walkway.
correct.
The doors, the high-speed doors, which will save us a bunch of money in the future.
Sure.
That's pretty obvious. There's 4 doors. Well, let's get 4 new high-speed doors. That's pretty easy.
Yes, absolutely.
We're not going to put a hole in the building to make them in,
And if there's other low hanging fruit, I guess
Yes.
is what we're asking about.
Sure.
Exactly.
We don't know what that would
Sure.
be. We don't want to dictate it.
Right.
But if there is other low hanging fruit, let's bring it,
Yeah.
let's bring it
Let's pick
forward
it.
and let's talk about it.
Okay. I'll work on a list of that type of thing, to see what would make sense.
Good.
Then what you just described with the issue with touching the driver room, that it involved ultimately dispatch and moving people around and so on. That's exactly what I was alluding to when I made my first comments, that some of it we can't get at because it's just too darn complicated as a standalone project.
Well, and then we'll put it on hold till we have a better plan. Or an approved plan. Shouldn't have said better, I apologize. Freudian. An approved plan, how does that sound?
Yeah, what I can try to do is categorize them in a way about, small impact, large impact as far
Yes.
as disruption or
Sure,
something like that.
sure.
I'll try and,
Whatever makes sense.
Do it to it.
well, whatever. I want to make sure you guys have the right info.
Yeah, yeah, but I think whatever information you give us is gonna be helpful.
Right.
Right now, we're floundering.
And I would assume that that is corollary to what we're going to do about what we're going to do about what Ben identifies as a greater impact that has to be done as a larger piece. That this is corollary to moving forward to the big picture problems like moving dispatch.
Well, yeah, that's part of the discussion, Donna. Sure, that'll be part of the discussion.
Well, I think we're done here.
Okay, any other comments? So basically, the report to the full board is going to be a recommendation that we talked about with supplement in terms of some low hanging fruit that we can talk about.
Are you looking at having that ready for this board meeting
I'd
or
like to, yes, I'd like to keep moving.
the list of low hanging fruit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything sophisticated as far as I'm concerned. Just, just a target list almost.
Okay.
Any other thoughts, comments? Donna?
Just that, can you offer some specific wording, how you will present this recommendation to the board? So we make sure that all 4 of us are on the same page going in there?
I really can't at this point. Not that I'm ducking, but I need to think it through. It's a little bit complicated in my way of thinking. Essentially, it's going to be a recommendation along the lines of what we talked about. And that is that the board would like to have more information on a strategic basis of where the market is going, where our business is going, so that we can make a more informed decision of what our physical requirements are going to be.
Along with a review of what was done since our little,
Well, that'll be
Any
part of the
strategic-
recommendation of reviewing the documentation that exists and where we're moving.
okay.
Lane, anything from you?
I move we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Chairman, I don't know, you've got on the agenda old business. and new business.
Oh,
just
thank
wanna
you.
entertain that to stay.
Yeah, any old business? Any new business? We have a second for the movement for adjournment. We don't have to, do we have to get a second for adjournment?
You don't have to, but He's made a motion, so we might as well accept a second.
Anybody want a second? I'll second it. Can I do that as chairman of the meeting? We're seconded. We're hereby adjourned. Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
My parliamentarian skills, sorry.